Well, thank you very much for having me again. It's good morning for me, depending where you are. I imagine it's a different time of the day. And excited to be back for part two. We looked at an introduction to CRM Analytics last week. And this week we're going to be performing a deep dive. Now, I say deep dive, but we'll still only be scratching the surface, really. I am building out some YouTube content on my YouTube channel, Coffeelytics, and slowly, week over week, be diving more and more into the platform, into the niceties and the nuances, as it were. But today, as opposed to just introducing the platform, really today is more about the demo. And it's a live demo, so let's see what happens. Sometimes things don't behave, so we'll see how we go. But I'm glad to be here today. And if this is your first session, if you weren't in the previous one, I do have a couple of quick intro slides to get us started. But my name is Mark Tossell. I am a lead solution engineer with Tableau. I cover Tableau, CRM Analytics, Data Cloud, etc. Pretty much anything around analytics and AI. And I'm based in Sydney, Australia. Whoops. So who am I? Here's a picture of me and my family and my little dog. And there's a picture of me in my famous jacket. Excited to be with you today. And I won't tell the story on this call, but I do have a pretty crazy and convoluted Salesforce journey. If you're interested in that, you can check out my blog, which is marktossell.com. So what is CRMA and why do you need it? I know we covered this last time, but if you weren't in the last session, we talked about why you might need CRM Analytics if you're already using the number one CRM in the world, which does have, amazing reports and dashboards out of the box. And we talked through some key thoughts around AI-powered insights in the workflow, using external data, moving from a system of record to engagement, increasing productivity and adoption, action at the point of insight, and hopefully not exporting Salesforce reports and combining them in spreadsheets, which is a perennial challenge. So, like I said, today is mostly about the demo. What I will do is I'll quickly show this slide in case I forget at the end, and I might get you, if you wish, Jay, to share these links if you want to in the chat. More than happy to connect with you later on. LinkedIn's probably the easiest way, but you're also welcome to email me or message me in Twitter. So here we are in CRM Analytics. Now, what you're looking at actually is, of course, your Salesforce homepage. And you are looking at a CRM Analytics dashboard on the Salesforce homepage. Now, this is actually revenue intelligence. So what you're seeing here is a very powerful out-of-the-box template that comes with the revenue intelligence SKU or license. But, I could show you how cool this is and how it works, how we can filter into our commit forecast, how we can then see AI-powered insights into deals that I'm likely to lose. And it looks like, unfortunately, I'm going to lose a lot. So I'm going to drill into those. And now I can see the individual records, and I can click on here if I so choose and use something called a configured record action, which takes you from data to insight to action. And that will bring me into the opportunity page. And again, on the opportunity page, instead of your standard typical opportunity record page, would look maybe like this. You're seeing some really clever, powerful insights all in one place right here. And they are built in CRM Analytics. So they're built in CRMA, they're built in the back end, and they're then embedded in, as you see here, a record page or previously the home page. So let's have a look where all the cool stuff happens. I'll click on Analytics Studio. That will take me into here. Now, I'm not sure, for those of you on the call or watching the video, I'm not sure what level of exposure and expertise you have with CRMA, but This is our Analytics Studio homepage. And this is where we can browse through our content. And I'm not going to go into all of this today because really the main focus of today is to show you how you can begin with a blank canvas and a data set and build out a functional working dashboard that can be shared with other people. The one thing I won't show you today, I won't go into the data prep side of things, the data manager, show you recipes and how you can connect the data, combine data, create those data sets. We only have so much time in our session today, and I thought I would show you how to build a dashboard beginning with that data set. It may be an opportunity for another demo in a future date. But for now, what I want to do is begin with our data set, which is opportunities. So I'm going to pick a fairly typical use case. Now, the first thing I want to do is have a look at this data set. Before we go into building out a dashboard, let's find out what's in our data set. Now, we could go in here, we can look at our measures, or we could go in here and look at our dimensions. We've got our dates and dimensions here. But there is another way of seeing what's in your data set, and that's going in here and looking at the fields panel. So on the left-hand side, I can select all of my dimensions. I can select my measures, as you can see here, and I can select my dates. Now, I can do a lot more than just look at these. I can go in, I can rename fields, I can edit the values of fields. So for example, if I wanted to go in and look at stage, I could actually go in and change the values of those stages and change the default colors. So there's a lot that can be done there. But just looking at this data set, looking at the information that I have at hand, I'm happy with that. That'll be a good starting point. And I'm actually going to close out this lens. And by the way, a lens in CRMA is essentially a query plus a visualization. So I can go through my data and I can look at the count of opportunities. If I wanted to, I could add the sum of the amount as well. And I've grouped these by my industry. I can go in and I can change the visualization, but that's not what we're going to do today. We're going to create a dashboard. So let's go up here. I'll click on my create menu. I'll hit dashboard. Now, we have some options. I could, if I wanted to, go in, and I often will do this if I'm in a hurry. I can actually create a dashboard from a template. So that gives me a really good starting place, right? So if I click on, let's say, details dashboard and say continue, then from there, it would actually let me build out from a template. But what I want to do today is show you how to build a dashboard from scratch. And, 45 minutes may seem like a lot of time, but really in the context of building out a dashboard, I'll probably just barely get into the basics. So here we are. Let me just zoom out a bit. Here we are in our canvas. This is our dashboard designer or dashboard editor. And down the left-hand side, we have all of the widgets or components or tiles that we're going to drag out. Charts, tables, repeater widgets, text, numbers, links, components, which are reusable assets, containers, which self-evident what they are, images, etc. Now, what I'm going to do firstly, I'm going to go in and I'm going to follow some best practice around my setup. So I find it's really annoying to build out a dashboard with only 10, 12, 15 columns because it really limits your flexibility. And the same is true of the row height. And this is how I usually set up my dashboards. You have options around the grid color. If you want to, you could go with a dark layout, or you could go with a white or a light layout. So I'm going to go with a light layout today. And I typically will set a maximum, depending on the use case, maximum dashboard width. Usually from a background of my widgets, I would typically just go ahead and choose transparent. And I'll usually add a border to my widgets. So it just, from an aesthetic and a functionality perspective, I find that's helpful. It's a transparent border. And that way, when I drag things onto the canvas, then I know what they're initially going to look like, and they'll be separated. So the first thing I want to do, I want to grab a container. I want to bring that up here. This is going to be my highlights panel, as it were. Now, this won't need any border. And what I'll do is I'll actually change the color of the background. So let's go in here, background color. Let's change that to dark like that. That'll work. And I'm going to give us a title. Sales Analytics. And of course, you notice we can't see that because it's dark. So let's make that white. I won't be giving a huge amount of explanation as I'm going along. Today is more around the deep dive in that you'll get to see me build. And of course, you'll notice that that default border has been applied there as well, which I actually don't want in this case. So let's go ahead, and we've got our Sales Analytics there. All right, now, let's go ahead and think through what we want to put on the page. So we've got an opportunities data set. I imagine that if we think through the idea of a hero chart, if you're familiar with that idea, the hero chart is essentially the focal point of the dashboard, and it is supported by other charts. And I'll often or typically put the hero chart in the top left, because that is where the eye is naturally drawn when you open up a dashboard. So a dashboard has flow. You need to follow a natural flow of information. So let's go ahead and do that. So opportunities, that's the one. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to have count of rows, and I'm going to have sum of amount. I actually want to show the number of opportunities, and I want to show the amount of opportunities. However, this is only for the pipeline. So if I'm going to only have pipeline, I'm going to have to filter out, everything that's closed, right? Because I want only those opportunities that are still open. So I'm going to apply that filter. I'm going to name this query. That's always best practice to name the query. And a little trick is I'll save it, because I'm then going to immediately put it in the title. And personally, I'll often give that a value of 16 for the size. It depends on the use case. So now we've got all of our open opportunities, and we've got the sum of the amount, the count of rows. So if we're creating a trend, we're going to have to trend by a date. So in this date, I'm going to click the close date. You could have other dates. Sometimes in the org, you'll actually have the date the opportunity was closed if you look at one deals, or you might look at the created date. But for now, let's go ahead. Now, what you're seeing here is the default visualization is a bar chart. Well, really, this is not great, is it? This is not a great way of looking at a trend. I find myself turning my head 90 degrees. So we have lots of different options here. I do have a column chart. That's better, but still not great. I've got a line chart. That's kind of helpful. But actually down here, I've got charts especially designed for trending under dates and times. And what I want to choose is the timeline combo. So I've got my count and I've got my amount, but I want to switch that. I personally like to use the bar for the amount. It's pretty much typically the priority value, and then the secondary value is the number of deals, right? So now I've chosen my chart type. It's also worth mentioning as well that we do have suggested charts over here. So there are some suggestions that the platform will make. For example, down there, we've got a combo chart. I'm going to move that legend because it's really wasting space. So I come down here, move that to the top center. I don't want a legend header. Everything's looking pretty good, except I want to go into my time combo chart options, and I want to choose a different axis mode, dual axis, like that. That's looking pretty good. So we've already named that query. So let's hit done. And you notice that when I do that, it's going to appear over here on the right-hand side. And we're just going to simply drag it onto the canvas. And I'm going to make that big. And then I'm going to add a border to it. The reason I'm doing that is, again, as I mentioned to you, this is a hero chart. In fact, you know what? Instead of adding a border, I'm actually going to go in here. Let's change this to a dark chart. Now, what you'll immediately notice is I can't see the writing anymore. How do I change that? It's actually really easy. Okay. I'm going to go in here, click on theme, tons of options in here. I'm just going to grab dark. And you notice when I do that, this is all now way more visible. Because it's a trend, it's really good to have a bit of space on the x-axis. And let's just go in here and move that. That's looking pretty good. I'm also going to make the heading a bit larger because it is our hero chart. So that's a good starting point. The only other thing I'm going to change is I like to filter using charts more so than using global filters. And to do that, you need to go into the query and enable multiple selection. So as I use this chart later to filter, I can perform multiple selection. So we've got a hero chart. We want to now add some companion or supporting charts to make sure we've got the same data set. Here we are back in this view. So the next thing I want to do is I want to actually go in and put in here pipeline stages. Now, actually, I'm just going to do stages. And we do something a little bit different. I'm going to go in and click on stages there. Not super interested in the number of opportunities, more so in the value. And let's click on stage. And I'm going to change the formatting here. I want the stages to stand out, as you can see there. Okay. And let's just put here, let's put down here, break down by stage. And I'm going to do something a little different. I'm actually going to go back in here, change my mind about something. I'm going to remove this filter from here because I'm going to do that a little bit differently. And I'm going to rename that. Let's see. Trend by close date. So I've made it a bit more generic. Let me show you why. Now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to grab a toggle. And what I'm going to do is I want to be able to toggle by open and closed. And I'm going to make that really obvious. You might not normally have a widget, a toggle widget that big, but let's go ahead and change the border. In fact, I'm going to add a border to that. The color will be light gray. Border width probably 1. Make that 2. Radius 4. And we should be good to go. Now look what happens here. So now I'm toggling between open, closed, and all. So it's a lot more functional than purely putting, when you put a filter in the widget itself, you're really kind of locking yourself in. So I hope that makes sense. Now what you'll see happen, as I come down here, look at my stages. Let's get rid of the legend. We don't need that. And I really don't need that y-axis. And I like clean, a dashboard I think should be as clean as possible. So anything that's not adding value, I've taken away. Now I left the axis here because this is a dual axis chart and I need to know the sum of amount, the values, and the count of rows of values. So now I've got this, don't forget, because I'm going to use that to filter, that's going to be multiple selection. Now to save time, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to copy this widget and I'm going to actually paste it. So I just hit Command V on a Mac, Control V on Windows 3 times. And I'm doing this really quickly. I'm not going to be as fussy as I normally would be in terms of, I'm really picky when it comes to spacing, etc. But today we just don't have time for that. So that looks pretty good. They all should be lining up. Let's widen that so the gap is the same. Okay. So remember, the point of this is to be able to investigate the trend and be able to filter that using these supporting charts and using our toggle. By the way, if you're wondering what those numbers are here, so these numbers under open and closed, that refers to the number of records. And I've left that there in this case on purpose because I'm interested in those values as far as the breakdown. So let's hit edit here. Now let's quickly go in and let's give some thought, just pause for a moment, think what we have. We've got our trend, we've got a toggle for open or closed, and we've got some charts that we're going to use in order to filter our timeline. And I've just changed the color there to make it a bit easier to read. So thinking through this, I've got a breakdown by stage. That's very helpful. What else would we like to perhaps filter our opportunities by? So I'm just going to give you some suggestions. The first one I'm going to pick is going to be industry. So let's select our industry. Now, in this case, I want to give it a sort that makes some kind of sense. Stages, you typically want to sort those by stage, and there are different ways you can do that. Manual sort, or adding a number at the front of the name, etc. But we won't worry about that for today for time's sake. But definitely here, I want to sort by descending, and I've got my industry, and I'm not actually interested in other. So let's go ahead and filter that out. So IND industry, we can quickly get to that. And I'm going to, I'm actually going to select all of them. And because consulting's give me a bit of a funny value, I'm going to pull those out. The other option is I could go in here and go does not equal. And I could say take out consulting and other. Let's do that for now. And let's go in here. And I want to change the formatting. I'll typically use this style of formatting for a chart where I'm sorting by a value. And we do want to change this name, otherwise it's going to be confusing. Industries and breakdown by industry. Let's update that. Awesome. Then I find it's helpful to have a breakdown by your product and product family, and then product. So for now, let's click on product family. Sort descending. Let's go back and do the same with the formatting. And I know I might be going quite fast for some of you, and I apologize. Just trying to show as much as I can in the time that we have. But feel free, this video will be posted on YouTube. So you can go back, watch it again, or you can use some of the other resources. And actually, I'm going to change that to a 16. Change that to 16 and that to 16. So we're starting to make some progress. In here, I'm going to break this down by products. And I'll show you why I have the product and the product family charts next to each other, because it makes for quite a helpful portrayal of information. It tells you a story, and you'll see what I mean in just a moment. So again, let's go in here, conditional formatting, sum of amounts, and breakdown by products. And update. And 16. Awesome. So really we've got, I think you'll see we've got quite a lot done in all of about 25 minutes, right? So let's go here into preview. Let's go into full screen. Now, The first thing I want to do is I want to look at my pipeline. So I'm going to click on open. And you notice how everything filters. Now, if I wanted to look at sales, or actually, if I wanted to look at close, whether it's won or lost, I could do that. And then obviously look at my sales. I just click on close one. So it's very simple. It's very easy to navigate. But if we look at our sales pipeline, I could go in here and see, wow, we've got a huge pipeline for June. Let's drill into that. Now I can see that I've got a ton of deals in the discovery phase, and I'm going to want to move those forward in the sales process. So we'll click on those. So the discovery stage opportunities for July are broken down as follows, and I can see my best industry is financial services, accessories, performance, and non-auto are the best product families, and I can see our best products. So why don't we focus on, let's pick our top 3 industries. And as I do that, you'll see that everything's filtering. I can still see there's other values, but the blue is highlighted because that's the month that I selected. And what I like to do is I like to look at the breakdown of each product family like this. So I'll click on car accessories, and now I can see in my top product family, these are my top products. I might say, well, let's select our top 2 product families. And now we can see, you know, we've got some great pipe around RV shelters and batteries. So keeping that in mind, what happens if I go in? Let me just move this out the way. Let's go out of full screen. Let's see if we go in, and I'm going to, just kind of moving backwards, going back through our data. We could have just simply hit the reset, but I just wanted to show you how you can kind of step back through. But if we now look at the products that we're winning, it might be a different story. So we come back to car accessories, right? You see a slightly different characteristics. The reason I'm showing you this is we've just built a really quite a useful dashboard in a very quick amount of time. And what I want to show you now is to build some of the kind of more cool stuff. What I often do when I'm creating a dashboard is I create myself a scratch page, or whatever you want to call it, a practice page or a whiteboard. I'm going to call this, I'll call this home for now. And I'm going to hide this from navigation. So if we did have time, which we won't, to add a page navigator on multiple pages, we don't want this page to show up. So let's say if we wanted to perform an analysis looking at a breakdown of products with product families, and we want to look at it by products we've actually sold. So let's create a query. Go to opportunities. We're going to look at our value. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to break this down by product family and product. Now, as I do that, that is not helpful at all. This is really not helping me. So I'm going to call this my product analysis. Now, I know, generally speaking, when I'm performing an analysis like this, if it's 2 measures, I typically, depending on the use case, use a scatter plot. Typically for analysis like this, where I've got 2 dimensions and 1 measure, I will usually use a heat map. But let's go ahead and have a look. I'm just curious, actually, what's going to be suggested here. And look at that. The number 1 suggestion is a heat map. Now, we could actually go in and we could have picked that out ourselves. So if you scroll down here, we've got our grids. So matrix is similar, but I find heat map is really where we want to be. We don't need a legend. That's not really helping us a great deal. Let's get rid of that. Now, if I just, I've got product analysis. Let me just name this. And then we did say we were going to go for 1 deals. So I'll simply just grab 1 equals yes. So you can see here, I'm able to perform a product analysis. And let's say I wanted to use this on the other page. What I would do is I would go in, I would grab these, and in order to grab all 3 of them, I'm going to hold down Command, or it would be Control if you were on a Windows. In fact, you know what? I'm going to create a new page. Bear with me. Let's do that. Then I can maybe, if I have time, show you a navigator. So let's clone this page. And let's rename it as Product Sales. Let's do that. So now we've got this here. I'm going to move it across, move left. Now, bear in mind one thing that's very important. When you clone a page, if I click on this, you'll see here, this widget exists on multiple pages. Changes here apply to instances on other pages. So if I change this chart, I'm also going to change that chart. So what I then do is, in this case, I don't want to do that. So I'm going to unlink that. So now those are separate and independent. But for the product sales page, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to rename it. I don't need this. That's irrelevant, right? And let's get rid of, I'm actually going to get rid of these, because what I want to do is make this a bit wider and go in here, move this to product sales. And because we're talking sales, not pipe, I'm just going to quickly go in like you saw before. Oh, it doesn't. Yeah. Okay. So if I do that, it's actually going to change my query. So I'm going to duplicate the widget. I'm going to delete that one. Whoops. That was accidental. Sorry. Let's grab this up here. And let's edit that now. You've got to be really careful when you have multiple copies of widgets floating around. I've spent a great deal of time before, and I've actually modified widgets forgetting that they were also cloned on other pages and completely destroyed the other page layouts, which is not a great idea. So let's go in here. And again, let's go into 1 equals yes. And I'm actually going to change this to a less generic title. Okay. Now, I'm also going to, that data over on the right, if you can see that, post-June, that's not really helpful. So let's filter out those dates. So I can also add a filter here for date. So let's say close date. And let's see, there are a bunch of pre-built options here, but none of these are suitable. We're going to custom. And let's say anything, well, let's actually just use the slider. So looking at that, I want to do anything that is, where are we, 2023? Yeah, and there are a lot of ways you could do this, but I'll just do it this way for time's sake. There we go. That looks better, doesn't it? Okay. Now, if I want it to be strict, I'd want to apply that same filter down here to my product analysis, but I don't really have time. I would do it a little bit differently. I would probably stick a date filter up here and then filter everything on the page by that, right? So now I've got that. I'm going to go in and select multiple selection. What I can do now is, if I go into preview mode, by the way, quick tip, if you hit E, that toggles you between preview and edit. And if you hit P while you're in preview, it toggles you between preview mode and non-preview mode. So if I'm looking here, I can see very quickly that car accessories and non-auto is doing great. I want to go in and let's pick some of our top products. Let's see how they're trending, because that's really important. So as I'm selecting those products, you'll see that my trending line is changing. And I'm actually, on an interesting note for this data, I'm actually seeing some seasonality here, right? So it seems like the middle of the year is really poor, whereas around April time and just post-Christmas does really well. So you saw how quickly I was able to do that. Now, another analysis that is quite popular is a period over period. Now, the challenge that you'll have is a lot of BI platforms for period over period, you're going to have to get into code. Now, can I build that in code? Yeah, absolutely, I can. Do I want to? No, unless I have to, because it's so much faster to use the UI. So I'm just going to open up a new query. Let's go ahead and let's create sum of amount. And I want to trend that by close date and by month. All right, let's go ahead and let's pick time bar, that'll work. And I'm actually going to pull out some of these outlier values. So let's go ahead and let's add another filter by close date. And we want custom. And I want to bring this forward till about, let's say, July. And let's say it's an American. In this case, it's a little confusing. Let's see, does that look better? No, let's actually pull it this way. I just want to give you a period over period that's going to make more sense. Okay, that'd be fine. All right. Now, at this point, how do I create a period over period analysis? Or in this case, a month over month, right? Well, this is where we come into one of my favorite areas of CRMA, which has grown and been developed tremendously since I began using Einstein Analytics at the start of 2017. Let's click on Compare Table. All right, what do we got here? Well, we've just got a table with rows and columns. We've got a close date, sum of amount. What are we going to do differently? We're actually going to add another column, and this will be our calculation column. There are different ways that you can do this, but let's go ahead and in this case, I'm just going to add a row. Oh, sorry, a column. And you can just pick any measurement. I just put count of rows because I'm going to change this. So I'm going to click on here, and now I can edit this column. And I'm actually going to call this month over month %. Now I can build formulas down in here. I've got lots of functions that are available to me, but it's way easier than that. Let's go into these pre-built functions. Let me show you how these work. So for example, if I wanted to know what the percentage of the whole was, then I can apply that. Interesting. I could also choose if I wanted a rank within the group. And you've got options here around the order and how you reset that group, etc. The platform is not behaving itself today. Hang on. Let's try that again. It's always the way live demos. You see errors you've never seen before. So we're running out of time here. So let's just quickly go in. Sum of amount, close date by month. Yep. And we want to do a time bar. That's great. I'm not going to worry about the filter for now. And we're going to go into a compare table. By the way, this is where you also can create your values table. So for all your row values, your detail rows, and then you can create a pivot table as well. So let's go into compare table. And let's just add any old measure. Let's edit this. And what I want to do is I want to do a period over period. Now we've got some options. It's given us two options here because it's seen a date field, right? And it knows we've got dates there, obviously. Let's do month over month, and we want that as a percentage. The format is a percent. That's great. Let's apply. Excellent. All right, let's close that out. Let's move back into our chart. Now, let's get rid of that because that one outlier is really killing us. So that's July. So we will go ahead and filter that out just so that everything makes sense. Let's do this. Be better. There we go. Okay. And this is our MOM. And we actually don't need a legend. Legends are great, but if you don't need them, they're just taking up space. Let's grab this over here. So now we've got our month over month comparison. Now, there are different ways that we could visualize that. We've chosen to use a bar here. But what you'll notice is if I go over here, and let's say I want to compare the period over period by industry, I can just add that breakdown by industry to my scratch page. And I'm just going to do it a little bit differently. Let's pull that over here. Make that a bit smaller. Do that. All right. So now, if I'm looking at my period over period change by percent, which is this here, my sales down here, I can then filter that. So I can see how we're doing period over period by our top industry, by our smallest industry. We're seeing a really large jump over there. That's interesting. Or I can go in and let's say I can, misbehaving. Let's pick our top 3. Okay, awesome. Now, the last thing I wanted to show you, before we run out of time and maybe take just a few questions, let's go in here and add a page navigator. Now, I really don't know why our engineers have decided that it was a great idea that every time you bring the page navigator out, it takes up the whole width of the canvas. I've always thought that was a bit weird. So don't worry about that. That was just my timer to tell me that I'm done or almost done. Let's go in here. And we can add our page navigator, and you can edit that here. So let's say our selected tab style, we don't need the line, and I would say we don't need the border. Great. So we also need to add that to any other relevant page. Let's actually just kind of put it here, and let's go add to page, product sales. Drag it up. All right. Now we can toggle between either one. It's also worthwhile noting that if I apply a filter on this page, it does carry through to this page. Well, that went really quickly. I hope that was interesting for you. I'm going to take a few minutes because I have to jump to another call, but I am going to take a few minutes and see if there are any questions. Jade, feel free to jump in at any point. I'm just going to bring up my contact details here. It seems like it was going pretty quick for everyone. Again, apologies for that. It will be available on my YouTube channel. And let me just put that in the chat. My YouTube channel is Coffeelytics.